Imagine walking into school and knowing that before you even speak, you've already been labeled popular, jock, nerd, outcast. Now imagine hearing that label so often that it slowly becomes how you see yourself. Today we're exploring one central question. How does the need to belong connect with peer pressure in the looking glass self? To answer this question, we'll draw from classic social psychology theory and modern adolescent research. Welcome to our podcast.
Seen, known, accepted.
How being accepted shapes who we are.
I'm Alexis,
I'm Megan.
I'm Angela.
and today we want to start off our podcast by bringing awareness to Reena Virk's story. So, Reena Virk was a 14-year-old girl who moved to Canada from India, and she was motivated by depression to fit in among her predominantly white peers, and her peers were reportedly influenced by Los Angeles gang culture. But Reena's desperate was only made worse by the bullying she suffered. Her peers mocked her relentlessly for her weight and for the fact that she was different and was from India. And so this caused her to take extreme measures to escape what she felt like was an oppressive home. In 1996, she falsely accused her father of sexually molesting her. This accusation led to Reena being placed for a few months in a foster home while her father was scrutinized by investigators. Reena's mother believes that if CPS had done a better job looking into their case, Reena possibly never would have even met her killers.
On November 14th, 1997, Reena Virk was invited to a party in a field behind the Shoreline School in View Royal. Police arrived to break up the party. However, the group quickly moved to a spot near the Craigflower Bridge to drink and smoke. But the party quickly turned into a nightmare for Virk. As a small crowd watched, one girl, Nicole Cook, approached Virk and put out a lit cigarette on her forehead. She went on to berate Virk, accusing her of spreading rumors about her and trying to steal her boyfriend. Then the other teens swarmed.
18s gather around Rena, viciously punching and kicking her, and burning her skin with cigarettes. As she lay on the ground, bearing the brunt of this assault, she reportedly cried out, "I'm sorry." Most people who were there left once the attack broke out, but some stayed and continued to watch. Eventually, one team called out for the others to stop, and it seemed as if this violent attack had came to an end. But as Rena Virk staggered, bloody and beaten across the bridge, she was approached again by two of her assassins, 15-year-old Kelly Edwards and 16-year-old Warren Glowstick. In the end, they were the cause of Rena's death. Rena's story shines a light on how important it is to bring awareness not only to peer pressure but bullying.
Psychologists consistently argue that the need to belong is a fundamental human motivation, and developmental psychologist Eric Erikson described adolescence as the stage of identity versus role confusion. And so, this is where young people are trying to develop a stable sense of self. And according to Erikson, forming identity requires negotiating how we see others, and how others see, like how we see ourselves and how others see us. And so belonging during adolescence isn't optional, and it's central to psychological stability. And so when that belonging feels threatened, self-esteem typically drops and anxiety usually increases, and this sets the stage for being more susceptible to peer pressure.
Yeah, and the idea that we build identity through others comes from sociologist Charles Horton Cooley, who introduced the concept of the looking glass self in 1902. He argued that we form our self-concept in three steps. First one being we imagine how we appear to others. Second, we imagine how they judge us. And third, we develop feelings about ourselves based on that imagined judgment. In other words, we become who we think others think we are. And this process is especially powerful and prominent in adolescence because this is when peer feedback carries enormous weight.
Yes, and empirical research also supports this idea. In a study that was conducted by Brown and colleagues, researchers examined how peer crowd labels like populars, jocks, brains, druggies, outcasts, things like that, were related to adolescent self esteem and internalizing symptoms. And they found that adolescents associated with high status crowds, like popular students and athletes, typically reported a higher self esteem and a lower level of depression, while adolescents associated with a lower status crowd, like outcasts or the drug affiliated groups, showed a lower self esteem and more internalizing distress. And so this suggests that peer crowd status functions as a social mirror and that mirror shapes psychological well being.
Yes, to add to what you just said, Alexis, another thing that the study found was that the psychological impact depended on whether adolescents actually agreed with the label that their peers gave them. For example, a popular student who rejected the popular label actually reported having lower self-esteem than those who actually accepted it. And this reflects what Harder and colleagues described in their 1996 study as a looking glass self orientation, where self worth becomes closely tied to perceived approval from peers. And when approval and identity don't align, psychological distress increases.
Yeah, and this reframes how we think about peer pressure. Peer pressure is not just about behaviors like substance use, it's about protecting belonging. If your identity is tied to being popular, you may feel pressure to act in ways that maintain that image. Same thing with being labeled as an outcast. You may feel pressure externally or internally to conform to that role. And the need to belong fuels conformity. The looking glass self explains why.
Yes, and to add to that, Angela, this process also doesn't stop just in adolescence. Raheem extended Cooley's looking glass self theory to individuals living in inner city communities that are socially labeled as ghettos. And Raheem argues that when society repeatedly assigns negative stereotypes, such like criminals, dangerous, or unmotivated, individuals start to internalize those labels into their identities. And so this is consistent with labeling theory, which suggests that repeated social labels shape behavior over time, and it becomes a self fulfilling prophecy, not because the stereotype is necessarily accurate, but because identity is socially constructed through repeated reflected appraisals.
Yes. Also the one common pattern across all of the studies was belonging influenced self-esteem, label influences belonging, and self-concept influence behavior. And even when the effects in the peer crowd study were modest, they were still statistically meaningful. Small shifts in self-esteem during adolescence can shape long-term identity trajectories.
This raises the question of how does the need to belong connect with peer pressure and the looking glass self? The need to belong makes adolescents highly sensitive to social feedback. The looking glass self explains how that feedback becomes internalized. Peer pressure emerges as the behavioral attempt to maintain social belonging, and labeling, whether in school, crowds, or broader society, reinforces identities that individuals may eventually adopt.
And so, if identity is shaped by mirrors, then we are mirrors for each other. And as Cooley suggested, we don't develop in isolation, we develop in reflection.
And that means the labels we assign, even casually, carry psychological weight. Because sometimes the way we see others becomes the way they see themselves. We want to end our podcast off by bringing more awareness of events and social events that has happened and affected our youth in present time. Our first one we want to talk about is bring back bullying. Angela, would you like to lead us in that?
Bring back bullying is something that I consistently have seen on social media. It's not a trend of sorts, but it's mostly people's posts being filled with comments that say bring back bullying because it builds character, or simply because people deem that person a loser, and they think that they should take it upon themselves to treat them badly so that they can become normal or their version of like what a person should be. That's what I have seen on TikTok and especially Twitter.
Yes, I've also seen it on TikTok where somebody would just make a post on their page, just being themselves, and people would just get up under the comments, being mean, being rude, and then some of them, like you said, they will put under there like bring back bullying, and that's like very hurtful. It's like we've gotten to a point where people forget that people really do have feelings and stuff like that does hurt people. Our next topic was the blackout challenge. Alexis, would you like to lead us into that?
Yes, so the Blackout Challenge was really popular in 2021. And it was a TikTok trend where the participants would choke themselves until they were unconscious. And then as they were waking up, it was said that they would feel euphoric almost. But a lot of the participants, it led to their death, and a lot of the participants were children. And so it was like they were just trying to fit in with the crowds and like be popular and be cool and say, "Oh yeah, I did something."
Yeah, that's honestly so sad because this also leads us into our next topic, which is the Subway Surfers. It also happened in 2021 and it also went viral because of TikTok. And the Subway Surfers challenges, y'all know the game Subway Surfers? Yes. So people actually, well, teenagers that actually started to play the game in real life, they would get on moving trains and they would try to jump on one from to the next. And many teenagers actually passed away from trying to attempt this challenge. And recently, the last thing that I saw was in 2025, two teenage girls actually passed away from trying to do that challenge. And we have one more thing we want to bring awareness to, and it's the Tide Pod Challenge. Angela, would you like to lead us into that?
Yeah, the Typod challenge was going on around 2017, 2018. I'm not sure where it started or how, but you essentially took a Tide Pod detergent and ate it, and that was part of the challenge or the trend. I'm not sure what the outcome was supposed to be. It's just that a lot of people were doing it, and a lot of people were ending up in hospitals just to do a trend.
Yeah, that is honestly so sad. It's like from all of these challenges and like stuff that is happening on social media, it is so sad to see, especially since it's really affecting our youth. And it really just ties into our topic with peer pressure and the importance of it in the looking glass cell. But that is all for our podcast.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something new.